before we get to the news, Lovelace. Okay, so Lovelace is obviously the story of Linda Lovelace, Linda Borman, who rose to prominence as the kind of poster girl for porno chic in the 1970s. And then later recanted, wrote a very harrowing book called Ordeal, in which she basically revealed that she had been horribly abused by her husband, Chuck Traynor, who was also her manager. And she became this sort of source of great controversy about the difference between the way in which this movie that she starred in was seen as this kind of great sexually liberating thing, but in fact was anything but. Anyway, this has been a project that's been going on for ages and ages and ages. Here's a clip with Amanda Seyfried as Linda Lovelace being auditioned for a movie that she doesn't fully understand. Here's a clip.
Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow. And everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go.
Yeah, that was great.
Did I tell you or what, right?
You did. You told us. Sweetheart, there's a little diner on the corner. Why don't you run down, grab us 4 coffees? Regular.
Okay.
All right?
On the corner?
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, darling.
Beautiful work. What was that? What was that? Does she even know what she was auditioning for?
I know. She's new at this professionally. I can show you this thing.
Well, Charlie, she's really cute. She's adorable. She's like a sexy Raggedy Ann or something. I
Cute freckles.
really dug her freckles. It's very... But, you know, for this industry, I don't know.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing about this is, from my point of view, some years ago, I think back in 2010, 2001, I think maybe, I made a documentary about Linda Lovelace, in which I think I was the last person to interview her husband, Chuck Traynor, and interviewed people like Gloria Steinem and Andrea Dworkin, who had all, been with Linda Borman at the point at which she sort of went public with her version of the real version of this story. And the fact of the matter is that her story is unbelievably harrowing. Whether or not you choose to believe every word of it, and some people don't and some people do, and that's fine, that's a matter of personal opinion, there are indisputed facts of her story which are grim and then some. And the really interesting thing is that in many ways her story is more about domestic abuse. It's more about how people are driven to prostitution. It's more about that than it is about, the great celebrated case of this very, very famous, porno film. And the interesting thing about this film is that on the one hand, it wants to deal with that. It wants to deal with the twin narrative. So it does something, oddly enough, that we had done with the documentary. We weren't the first to do it and we wouldn't be the last, which was to tell the story twice. Firstly, the sort of popular story about somebody who was, really enjoying this industry and great, and then going back and telling the same story, saying, well, actually, they were horribly abused by their husband and manager. And it attempts to to do that, but at the same time, it kind of has a televisual sensibility about it, which means that it doesn't ever really deal with the really nasty stuff about Linda Lovelace's story, because her real story is genuinely horrific. I mean, there's so much. I don't want to sort of discuss it now in detail, but I mean, anyone who knows about her claims of the things that happened to her, they are far worse than anything that's depicted in the film. So on the one hand, it does say, she was horribly abused. She was treated appallingly by Chuck Traynor, who I have to say, as I said, when I interviewed him, the most terrifying thing about him was that he didn't seem to regret or be embarrassed by any of the things that he was accused of doing. It wasn't that she accused him of doing stuff and he denied it. It was that she accused him of doing stuff and he just went, yeah, and. I mean, he was one of those people who just, when I was interviewing, I was completely baffled by somebody who had so little empathy for the people. I mean, at one point I said to him, does it not even occur to you that your life worked out this way and her life worked out this way? Is there anything about this that you feel bad about? Nope, not at all. It was a genuinely worrying interview. And the film, it understands that the key thing about this is that she was an abused woman, but it doesn't have the strength of its convictions to really deal with just how much that happened. It also rearranges key narrative events to change the relevance that they have in her story. I mean, again, without wishing to discuss stuff inappropriately on the radio, one of the things that both Gloria Steinem and Andrea Dworkin said is that there is an infamously horrible thing that happened to Linda Lovelace before the whole, porno chic thing kicked off. And in this film, it's transposed to afterwards. And that makes a difference, because what it does is somehow it slightly undermines the fact that there is a part of her story which is horribly mundane and has real relevance for people who have suffered those kind of, domestic abuse and being driven to prostitution by these appalling circumstances. I think the performances are fine. I mean, I think Amanda Seyfried gives it, a very good run. The script doesn't really allow her to do very much other than very broad strokes. And there is a kind of nostalgic Boogie Nights sort of sensibility going on there in order to make the thing palatable. I think the problem is that the story is so much grimmer and also so much more complicated. What the film wants to do is to take the rough edges off and also to make it have a clear narrative arc with a beginning, a middle, and an end. It didn't work out quite like that. It may be that if you don't know anything about the story, you would see it and think, okay, well, that's a really interesting lifting the lid on, the apparently glamorous porno chic industry. If you do know about it, it does feel like it's soft peddling. I understand why it's soft peddling. This is why they had such a trouble bringing this story to the screen. Because if you want to tell that story truthfully, it's a really tough story.